Welcome to Rise and Realign, Conversations for the Sensitive Soul. I'm Melissa, and this space is for those of us who feel deeply, love fiercely, and sense the world in ways that are hard to explain but impossible to ignore. Here, we honor your sensitivity as a strength, not something to fix. Through reflections, realignment, and soul led stories, we remember how to move through life in a way that feels true to who we really are. This is your space to rise, to realign, and to come home again and again to your own wise, sensitive self. So today is episode 22, which I don't know about you, but numbers didn't always have meaning for me. But definitely, the number 22 has held meaning for my family since my brother passed. That was back in 1990. So I just the number 22 just always lights me up, and not just because it reminds me of my brother, and the special place, that he is within my heart, um, but just because it's a master builder number. It's about illumination and coming together, right? And so um, I've just been very curious about a lot of things, um, which, as somebody who, in Western astrology, I'm a Gemini. So a lot of, you know, thinking and curiosity and, um, you know, a lot to talk about, really. And there's just so much to explore, right? Like, I have to say, um, having the freedom to just learn that there's so much more available than many of us were, raised to know. And again, to no fault of our parents, because they lived their journey, with where theirs began. But I'm really, really grateful that in 2008, I did experience a spontaneous spiritual awakening. And I didn't know what else to call it other than a spiritual awakening. But I've certainly learned since that time that even those words, spiritual awakening, means so many different things to so many different people. So I can only speak from my own experience. Um, and for me, I was living in a very, 3D materialistic world, right? Like, if you've listened to some of my earlier podcasts, I used to feel like I was just a high strung person. I couldn't change, right? And I had been able to check off all the boxes as far as, that American dream. But when that awakening happened, I mean, it just opened me up to just pure positive love energy. It was just bliss. And the um, thinking mind, which used to be so busy for me, right? And I used to, call my best friend. I used to call my mom like every day because there's just so much to talk about, right? When the mind is so busy like that. Um, but it was quiet. And I remember them even calling me because they hadn't heard from me and they wanted to understand, what was going on. But I was married at the time, and I was so, so blessed to have a husband who was very open and just really listened to what I was receiving in this openness. And I just felt like the veil was thin between physical and non-physical. And I just lived in this bliss and love filled vibration for about 5 to 6 weeks. And, my body just had like any of the symptoms I was dealing with before, which, at the time I had a diagnosis of Hashimoto's, IBS. I was fatigued, you know, my body, though, was just all of a sudden at peace. It was like I didn't have the digestive upset. I was not fatigued anymore. I just felt so healthy, so alive, like filled with vitality, and just like this infinite field of possibilities just opened up. And um, I just so much changed because I wasn't operating from that thinking mind anymore. I was literally living from my heart space. I literally had just dropped out of my head and into my heart, and it was wide open, and it was just blissful and beautiful. And I just saw so much, more understanding of like the different roles we all play and how we're all needed, whether, and again, just seeing that our careers, our financial status, right? Like none of that mattered. We all were walking our path. So, like for me, whether it was somebody who was, walking that career path of, being an educated professional, right? In the helping field versus somebody who was like, nope, school's not for me. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do this task, right? Whether, again, no matter what it was, I just saw value in all of it. Like it's all needed, right? We need people who are willing to say, yeah, sure, I'll hang on the back of this truck and pick up trash. Because back then, that's what they did. They didn't have these trash trucks that pick them up for you, right? And I only remember this change because my young son, who's now 13, loved the trash trucks, right? But my point is, I could just see how we all have value, right? There is no hierarchy of, professions and, money did not equal status and evolved consciousness or anything, right? Like it was truly this totally open and even field of consciousness in the sense of we're all here with a divine spark and with a divine purpose. And we don't necessarily know, you know, what that's going to be, right? When I think of, a lot of kids are asked, well, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? It's like, where does that question even come from, right? Like, let's live in the now and let life show us, what lights us up, what opportunities come to us. Like, let us be here now and trust the natural unfolding, just like nature does, right? Um, so this awakening, though, period was, again, it just revealed so much. And it did help me understand that I was not just Melissa in this body, living the life that I was, right? Which was married for, I think, 16 years when I had the awakening, and I had 2 children. Um, and I even remember talking to they were 7 and 9 at the time. And I remember saying, okay, like, I get it. I don't have to direct your life. I don't have to decide, all of these things about what you're going to need or do in the future. I know now that you have everything you need inside of you, right? Like the sacred geometry right inside each one of us. And I'm here to listen and love and support you, as your journey unfolds. And at the time, my son was 7. And I said, if you could change anything about your life, what would it be? And he said, I want to be homeschooled. And I was like, okay. Now, I never envisioned myself being a homeschool parent. Nope, never did. I, again, used to just be so focused on balancing my career, right? And being a mom, which I loved so deeply. And always will. I feel it's such an honor and a privilege to bring children into this world and to have them want to call me mom and want to talk to me, right? Like, because that's not the experience of all people. Um, but it wasn't a surprise that he asked that because this was a kid who, you know, I had already read the book, like How to Raise a Spirited Child, because I needed to understand, how to support him before the awakening, even because it was like he would complain about school. He would say he was bored. He would, he just wanted to stay home and do his own thing, right? And it like frustrated him when he'd go to school and he'd get all lit up and excited about learning about the solar system. And then, the teacher would say, "Oh, we just introduce it. That's all. We're not going into it more. He'll wait and do it in the next grade." And I'd be like, what? Like, my kid is lit up about this, and you want to put that on hold for a year? Like, I didn't understand it. And I didn't understand their report cards either, because they weren't reporting on what my children were capable of. They were reporting on, their ability to show the progress that they provided through teaching. So for me, it was just like, I see it. Okay. Like, let's talk about this. And I was surprised when my 9-year-old daughter said, "I want to be homeschooled too." And it was really quite the journey, right? Like, I'm in this totally open and awakened state, and I'm sharing this with my family, and they're my family of my home, right? My husband and my two kids were very open and just excited about the changes. Um, And everything did change because I no longer was the same person. Because now I understood that each of us has our own sacred geometry within us, our own life journey with lessons to help us discover, more of who we really are, right? Um, and I received the download that I am eternal. I am abundant and I am connected. And not just me personally, right? Like, this was the download for our experience here as a soul. Now, this was new information for me. At 38, I had not thought about these things before. Even with my, very active mind, the thoughts that were coming to me pre October of 2008, were very, um, just say, kind of confined to this three-dimensional material world. But I definitely um, didn't feel that heart connection until this awakening. And then everything changed. Um, and I'm sharing this in more detail today because, you hear me talk a lot about being a highly sensitive person, and to understand, how you're wired differently if you are among the roughly 20 to 30% of this population of individuals. It is in over 100 species, but as far as being a human, right? Like, I talk a lot about what that's like, so that we understand how our nervous system is more finely tuned, right? But I didn't understand a lot of this because of my early journey and the disconnect that can happen for us, right? There are certainly people who are born and stay connected to that soul um knowing, Right. And so I'm speaking again about mine just because there are so many people who don't know who they can talk to about this. And I was certainly one of them. Let me tell you, when I had that spiritual awakening in 2008, I was like, who can I talk to? And Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer and Esther and Jerry Hicks were all part of, and Greg Braden were a big part of the awakening because I just sat down and watched the movie You Can Heal Yourself. And they were each speaking about it in there. And um, I went to an I Can Do It conference and I got to, get a book signing with Louise Hay, and I got to interact with Wayne Dyer as we walked out after watching his, um, I think it was his last movie, but I can't recall the name of it. And I just remember feeling so elated that I got to be there, but it didn't answer any more of my questions. What I realized was I was awakened and I needed to discover things on my own. And so I'm sharing this again because I know how lonely the journey can be for those of us who are, whether you resonate with the term, old soul, right? Maybe you've always known that you were a little different in that sense, right? Um, I did not used to think of myself as an old soul, and I don't know that anybody ever told me that. But once I had the awakening and I started to explore more in this arena, I totally could see that I've always been an old soul, right? Like the way I just really didn't enjoy being with same aged kids. School was really hard for me. I missed a lot of school because of, gut issues. Um, and but in my career, I mean, again, I was 19 working in a locked psychiatric ward. That's a big responsibility, right? And at 12, I was already, babysitting a 6 week old, multiple days a week as a job. So, like, when we think of the responsibilities that old souls can take on at a younger age, right? It doesn't make it easy for us, though. We don't know necessarily, right? Like that we're an older soul. So, I'm just speaking to this more because, you know, oftentimes this old soul path begins with the disconnection that I was just talking about, and it ends in deep remembrance of purpose. And although this spiritual awakening occurred, gosh, it's going on 18 years, so it's been 17 and a half years. This is what's been coming, you know for me, is to really keep raising awareness that sensitivity is an intelligent design, that we're here to feel things, to sense things quicker, to bring us back home to who we truly are, right? And as society, continues to get overloaded with, there's just so much with light pollution, right? With the noises, with the amounts of people and, the just the things that go on in the environment, but the hecticness of everyday modern living, right? Like this is a time for us to understand why we're here with such a high sensitivity, right? Like I see us, again as the ones who can learn more quickly about why you're designed the way you're designed and the gift that it is, and to unwrap it so that you can, again, keep realigning with who you really are, right? With what you're really here for, what lights you up, right? Because there is no hierarchy of, well, I'm here to do this, and that has this status, right? Like none of that matters. We're souls in a human body And so the the important thing to understand from my perspective is to understand us ourselves in our wholeness, right? And I say this in different ways. I say mind, body, spirit. I say mind, body, heart, and soul. Like there's no, again, one right way, because that's another thing that I've learned. Like we're all here having a very unique experience, which is all valid and beneficial to the all, to the wholeness of what we're experiencing here. Um, but as highly sensitive individuals, right? Like we need to come back to who we are. And being highly sensitive, there's a lot to understand. I mean, I learned it through, you know, the pain that came after that spiritual awakening, because initially I thought, I want to share this with the world, right? I want everybody to know this. I was just so lit up and happy. I wanted everybody to feel the love and the light and the peace and the bliss and see the beauty that I was seeing. But after those roughly 5 to 6 weeks, like I was thrust right back into the heaviness and the heightened sensitivity, and went through a lot of challenges. Um, um, Definitely leading from my heart felt clear, but my nervous system, it took it quite a long time to really recalibrate, and to really be able to navigate my understanding of what was happening to me, to my children, to our relationships, right? I went through a lot of changes, and I'm grateful, to be on the other side of all of it, or a lot of it. I don't know if I can say all of it, but definitely a lot of it. And I'm somebody who, like, I dive deep. I felt like after that spiritual awakening, I became a mermaid. I felt like I would just keep diving deep into the darkness and just keep searching. Where are the gems, right? Where's the jewels? Where's the gems? What am I getting through this experience? Like it has to be serving a purpose, and then I'd feel connected to it, and I'd, feel like I'm like swimming up to the surface to the light, and now I'm like, all happy again and feel like I got it all figured out until the next thing. But I definitely am so grateful to be on the other side where I see the whole picture. My life, my career has guided me through amazing learning opportunities, and um, I'm grateful. My former husband is my dearest friend. My children are adults. I was blessed with another child who, that's just a whole nother story in and of itself. How how he came into this world, but definitely through peace and love and to shine more light. And so I just really want to speak to how whatever your journey has been, right? Whether you call it a spiritual awakening, whether you call it, whether you call yourself an old soul, whether, you call yourself an empath, like there's so many different words that describe similar things. And so I'm just sharing from my heart with my voice, because I know the depth of beauty that there is within each of us, and our journeys are not easy, and we don't need to pretend that they are. And this is definitely my time to be raw and real, and I realign every single day, with the ups and the downs that happen. So this is definitely not a time, I've learned, right, to like have a guru, I guess, many call it. But believe me, I tried. I tried. I turned to a lot of ministers, um, and just found myself like, nope, You got to keep going back inward, keep going inward. You know, it's the inner journey, and no one else can take you there but you. Um, and so I just want you to know, like, wherever you are on your journey, whatever you're feeling, you know, whatever words resonate for you the most, you know, trust in yourself, you know, because you are so much more than you probably realize. Um, and there are a lot of beautiful and amazing opportunities to connect with other sensitive souls in a variety of ways, right? This is just the way I'm walking and offering to support sensitive souls to rise and realign with their own truth, their own voice, their own path and journey, you know, because we do tend to carry, um, you know, more than is ours to carry. And until we realize that, we can get really bogged down. And stress does not serve us. It absolutely will interfere in our flow. Um, you know, anyway, I could go on and on about how that affects, you know, how our thoughts are flowing, you know, how our, you know, water and electricity in our body is flowing. You know, there's so much that I'm just so honored and blessed to have learned about, both intuitively and through some really great other kindred souls out there, sharing their truth. So, well, I just realized like that was a really long sharing, and we haven't breathed together yet. So, I really want to take a moment of stillness, you know, where you can place a hand on your heart and feel the intelligence of your own sensitivity, right? That heartbeat, that pulse of your own unique, intelligent design. And just connect with the breath. Maybe inhale as deeply as you can, and second inhale, and then a nice slow exhale out your mouth. Whether you're blowing out a candle or saying, ah, just let it out. Whatever you've been holding and carrying, right? And just do that again. Inhaling nice and deep. You can either hold it or just do a second inhale, whatever is going to help open you up for things to flow more easily. And then that nice exhale to just release, relax, let it all go. And again, I'm always a fan of at least three, but you know your body, your felt sense, and how many you need. Um, so I did want to update that I had shared that I've been quietly creating a course, and more information comes to me as I'm creating. And so it will be available in the coming weeks. But the more aligned name um, that came is your sensitivity is intelligent design. Because I really want to share both the science, right, and the soul, um, and reconnecting you with your body. So that will be coming soon. So stay tuned for that. And along with that will be a seasonal gathering for embodied alignment. And that'll be sensitivity, realignment spirals. So that will just support you as you start to become more aware of, again, the wholeness of who you are and to reconnect with you. So, as always, you know, I invite you to keep returning to your breath, to your body, and to what feels true for you right now. There is nothing you need to fix. Just notice what's here for you. Because where the heart leads, the body remembers and the soul awakens. As a reminder, we are here together to rise, reclaim, remember. And as always, I'm so grateful you're here. And if you'd like to walk this sensitive and strong path with me, I also write a weekly Rise and Realign lunar letter for sensitive women who are learning to understand themselves more deeply. And you can join me there. Everything is at realignwithmelissa.com. Take good care of you. Much love and light.